The art of fatherhood. How to avoid letting your ego rule over you. There are chapters and verses in life, some short and some long, and they don't always flow into each other as they should. Some days are full of happiness and beautiful serendipity, while others are full of the sadness of only talking to people because you need something from them. Each a result of our own choices. It comes from out of nowhere. Suddenly, you run out of time. Suddenly, the second hand of the clock no longer ticks, but chimes. It rings like an alarm bell. Time itself appears to have been stolen in some kind of invisible crime. Money can be replaced. Possessions can be repossessed. But time can't be renewed. It can't be returned. It can't be refunded. You can't really turn the clock back. For that reason, those that steal time are the ultimate master thieves. With great swiftness, they turn the accessible into the intangible and replace opportunity with meaninglessness. The most artful thieves don't just steal time. They steal the moments and memories within the time. They influence by removing the effect. They come first by sneaking in through the back door and cutting across the kitchen. And in the game of life, placement matters. Kids learn this early on, while adults have just learned to live with something so obvious that they barely recognize it anymore. You may well ask yourself, does first place matter? Well, yes and no. If you ignore it, then it still plays its part. You always have to position yourself well. Sometimes you will wish to be seen, and other times you will wish to be a shadow. In terms of how we think, we are affected by firsts and placement and order. What comes first and who comes first has an influence on what follows. Every life is a narrative, a story in which what happens next always matters. And what happens next is predicated on what happened before. You base your actions on not only your own previous actions, but also on the previous actions of others. We often seek to avoid the congestion and traffic jams of life by altering our route or our plans accordingly. But what is it that we are really avoiding? All of the stories that we hear affect our thought processes. Memories matter and can even play tricks on us. When the news tells us of a problem, we first consciously and then subconsciously seek to avoid the problem. We are guided, but what if our guides are misled? Through the human chain, errors appear more readily than we would care to admit. Communication often leads to confusion, as it is rather an inaccurate science. Confusion is a trance-like state of muddle and befuddle. When we are unsure what to think, we are unsure how to proceed. Confused people are easily influenced. Those unable to shine with brilliance will often seek to muddy the waters. The resulting status quo can paralyze us and does little to help us come to terms with reality and the realization that shadows on the wall are just puppets, and that perhaps we have all been played. When the fog lifts, we are sometimes little wiser to everything that has just happened. What we hear first has the greatest influence on us. That is why the television and radio news channels seek to break the most pressing or seemingly important stories first. This gives them some kind of authoritative presence in the mind. Human interaction is little different on a personal level. The human ego drives most people to fear that their life or choice may be framed negatively by others. To say that it matters little what other people think is to ignore the collective mindset and the reality that the truth is relative to your ability to discern the truth. Most people's worldview is disparate and narrow. It is defined by close borders that provide some relative safety and that will ensure no counter-narratives can possibly exist. To the extent that counter-thoughts that challenge reality are peripheral and of little consequence, simply because we wish them to be so. Our own ability to uncover truth is limited to the time that we spend outside of our comfort zone in narratives usually alien to how we exist on a daily basis. The narrative that most people opt for is to play the part of the hero in their own life. They are struggling in some great quest against insurmountable odds, and they face an ever steeper incline of mountainous challenges on a daily basis. For the majority of people, this is just not true. The majority of people either invent a narrative or replace their own life by living vicariously through the idolatry of idols interwoven through the media that surrounds us. These heroes fight our fights, and we sign up to their reports and philosophies and newsletters. Their needs and their truths are rarely relevant to our own. The truth is the first tragedy of a relationship breakdown. It gets replaced by a series of events designed to paint the picture of victim and victor with very broad brushstrokes. Objectivity gets replaced by the impressionistic ego that cannot bear to be told that it has failed on any level. The truth is crushed by the weight of the angst and panic to seize control of anything when you have control of nothing. Denial is then the first stage of every trial. Few people seek to have a logical understanding of interpersonal conflict. It involves an in-depth and intense understanding of the past, of patterns laid down in childhood, of roads paved long before we were born. We arrived in a past that is not our own, and live in a future that seeks to defy who we were. Your mindset in the moment must remain free of worry if you are to progress towards any positive resolution. Knowledge that empowers will vanquish the fear. Information that informs will influence, and you must know the difference. We must not seek to escape ourselves, but understand how to navigate the reality and to know what is real. We do this through reason and evidence and patience and being virtuous in our nature. We do this not through storytelling, but through listening to ourselves to find out what our sense data is telling us. To seek beyond the what and into the why. We do this through the encouragement of independent thought rather than dependent ideologies. For sure, it is hard to hold on when there is no one to lean on. What we invest our time in is of great importance, as what fills our mind fuels our life. On one level or another, eventually thought becomes action or inaction. Without some kind of meaningful effect, life itself becomes meaningless. To have good reasoning and to understand the reasoning of others will serve you well as a life skill. If you do wish to influence others, ensure that it is for enlightenment and not aggrandizement. The art of fatherhood.